let's propagate hydrangeas from cuttings. It's June, so it's the perfect time. June between now and sort of the end of July is a really good time to propagate hydrangeas. And we're going to propagate our hydrangea by taking cuttings. So let's just get into it. So the first thing you need to do is cut either in the morning or on an overcast, cooler day like I am doing here. It's an overcast day, so it's cool, which means the hydrangea is nice and hydrated. So that's another thing you need to have, is a very well hydrated hydrangea. You don't want a wilting, floppy cutting. The stems need to be what is known as turgid, which is stiff but bendy. So you don't want the harder woody part of the stem right down at the base, and you don't want the floppy, softer stem right at the top of the stem. That's too soft, it will wilt. You want something about here, look, where you can see that it's nice and stiff, but it's still bendy. That's the perfect, you can see, look here, it's nice and stiff. It's not wobbling too much. That's the perfect cutting material. So then what we're going to do is we're going to look down and cut down about 2 to 3 leaf nodes. A leaf node is just where the leaves come out, and you can see where the leaf meets the stem, there's like little buds. That's where all the hormone is concentrated, and that's where your root is going to come from. So we need the stem. We're going to cut right down to the next leaf node that we don't need. And then when we've got our stem, we want to cut it just below a leaf node. And we need a jar of water because we need to keep these hydrated while we cut a few stems. As you can see there, that is just below a leaf node there, which is perfect cutting material. And you can see the little buds, and that is where all the hormone is concentrated, and it's going to give us our roots. So now that we have a piece of material, this one has been sitting in the water, we're going to take off these lower leaves. And because these are going to be roots now, we don't need these leaves because these leaves will just rot. So we can take those off. This is going to be where the root is. And as I said, the nodes are where the concentration of hormone is, and this is where the roots are going to come from. And then we don't need these large leaves here. So we're just going to reduce the size of these leaves here to make sure that the plant doesn't lose too much water. And then we're going to cut out this tip because the tip is too soft. And again, the plant is going to waste energy trying to grow this tip here. So we're going to cut it out because it's just not really going to serve us any purpose at the moment while we're trying to get roots on the plant. Then we place the cutting back in the water while we prepare all the other cuttings, again making sure that they don't dehydrate. So let me just show you that again, because one is never enough, I find, when you're trying to do these cuttings. You like to be able to see at least a couple. So here's another stem that I'm going to take. Again, I should have said at the beginning, you don't want to take a stem that has flowers on it. You can process one that has flowers on it, but it's better if it hasn't put energy into flowers yet. And as you can see, I'm counting down 2 to 3 nodes there because this is the best material here. So I'm going to cut under this node here, there, as you can see, this one's only going to have 1 node. And then again, remove those lower leaves, remove the tip, and then we can reduce the size of the larger leaves at the top by just folding them in half like so, and then snipping them off. And that reduces the size of them to keep them so that they can keep themselves, so that the plant can stay hydrated basically, and put all its energy into growing roots at that bottom node. And here's just one more example. I'm going to take this one as well. There's no flower. It's a good, strong, bendy stem that's nice and hydrated. Cut out the tip, cut off the bottoms, and then reduce the leaves by half. And as you can see, that's a pretty quick process. This whole thing has taken me about 10 to 15 minutes, and that includes potting up as well. And as you can see, that's really nice, bendy, but stiff stem. That's what they call semi-ripe. So it's stiff and it's able to hold itself up, but it's still bendy and fresh, and it's nice new growth from this year. And I ended up taking 4 cuttings from this plant, but I actually could have taken more. So let's go and process them now and pot them up so you can see how to deal with them at the next stage. So as you can see, they are in water at all times to keep them nice and hydrated. And remember, I'm doing this on a cool, overcast day. If you've got a sunny day forecast, then you want to be doing this in the morning when the plants are fresh and rested and cool and hydrated. And there you are, I'm just laying them down here so that you can see, but I'm just deciding that I'm going to cut those bottom leaves off and have 2 nodes on this one as well. It doesn't need all those leaves. So I'm going to turn this cutting into the same size as the other cuttings because it's nice to have them all uniform as well. And there you can see there's some with 2 have 1 node and 2 have 2 nodes there. And that's fine. All variations are fine, but you can see the cuttings are quite uniform and quite neat. Now, although I'm going to prepare my hydrangea cuttings in a compost mix and leave them in my greenhouse to grow, you can actually just grow them in a jar of water on a north facing or, a windowsill that doesn't get too much direct sun. You don't want to fry them, and you can just leave them in clean water. Make sure you freshen up the water and don't let it go moldy or anything like that. Keep it fresh, keep it clean, keep it oxygenated. Make sure the nodes are in the water. The nodes where the roots are going to grow from are submerged. And then you can just leave it on a windowsill and you can do your cuttings that way, which could save a lot of money and time, especially if you have a smaller garden and you just don't have the compost or whatever. You can just root your cuttings this way on a window ledge. But I'm going to do mine in compost in a propagator. So the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my compost, and I just use a good quality multi-purpose compost, which I then mix with sand. And I do a ratio of sort of 1 cup of sand to 2, probably 2.5 cups of compost, just to make the sand helps the drainage and keeps the compost loose, because you need the compost to be loose because when those roots start to grow, they're going to be really fine and they need to be able to move freely through the compost, which is open and free draining. Next thing I do is I mix in some water into the compost. The next thing you need is a plant pot, or in my case, I'm going to use a water bottle, but you're going to need a water bottle anyway because you're going to use it as a dome over the top. That's going to be our propagator. I'm just going to use the whole bottle. I'm going to use the bottom for the plant pot and the top for the propagator. And the propagator just keeps it moist because the enemy of cuttings is drying out. If they dry out, you can forget it. They're not going to root, but they're too fragile at this stage and they need to stay moist. But again, they don't want to be waterlogged because they will very quickly rot as well. So you can see the cutting will fit nicely and perfectly in this bottle. So the next thing you need to do is just cut off the bottom, and then you have to poke some holes in for drainage. You don't want it to be waterlogged. And you fill it up with the soil, obviously, and you need to fill it up to a height that will cover the nodes. You do not want the nodes out of the soil. The nodes that you've prepped, that you trim the leaves off, those nodes must be below the soil. And as you can see, because the cutting is at the right stage, it's firm but bendy, but firm. So it's not snapping and it's just sliding straight into that compost. That's how you know the cutting is at the perfect stage for taking a cutting, obviously. And then you just need to put the water bottle lid off. You take the top off the water bottle, obviously, because you want some air getting through, but then this will mist up, you see, and that whole chamber will be kept sort of highly humid, and this will of course keep the cutting from drying out, hopefully. I mean, you still have to water it. And then I put it in my greenhouse. My greenhouse is shaded in this corner by a tree, so I know it's not going to get frazzled by too much sun. And as you can see here, these are other cuttings I've taken. You can see how the bottle is misting up and creating a humid environment, which is perfect for cuttings. Then I put a little tray underneath, and in this case I'm going to use these foil trays, these aluminium foil trays, because they're extremely cheap for one thing. And then every day you just go in there and I'll just top it up with a few half a centimetre or so of water, which it will absorb very quickly, and that will keep it from drying out. And before you know it, you'll have roots. I'll have to come back to you and show you my roots. And here's my 4. You can see here's all my 4 cuttings here. I'll have to get back to you and show you the roots when they've developed, but I'll do a follow-up video on all my cuttings. I'm doing a series on cuttings at the moment. I'll do a follow-up video and we'll see how they all did. But that today is your hydrangea cuttings. So go and get propagating your hydrangeas. And if you found this video helpful, don't forget to subscribe, like and share with anyone else you think might be interested. And also don't forget to visit my website at www.jillbretherton.com. Thanks for watching. Bye.